Hello, my name is Laura. Welcome to my channel. And what I'm going to be doing today is making a wild rice. This is a raw wild rice. So before I even start the rice, what I'm going to do is make a sauce for the rice. And what I'm going to be putting in this is coconut aminos, and I'm going to be using some cumin, and I'm going to use raw almond butter, and I'm going to put some cayenne pepper, which you don't have to use cayenne pepper if you don't like things spicy, but I love to spice things up a little bit. I'm also going to be adding, this is miso, and this is the low sodium miso. Whenever I use miso, I always get low sodium, and I'm using about a tablespoon of that. And then I've got about a third cup of coconut water. So I'm going to make the sauce by pouring in the coconut water, and I'm going to put in the miso soup. And I'm going to add a little bit of the cumin, which is probably about maybe a teaspoon of cumin or so. And some cayenne pepper. And I'm going to use about a tablespoon, sort of like that. That might be a little more than a tablespoon of almond butter, raw almond butter. And I'm just going to go ahead and mix up this sauce. And what you hope for is for it to get kind of creamy. This is one sauce that I make that I don't have to put it in the blender or anything. And I kind of like the way it is without being in the blender. It seems to be a little bit creamier that way and a lot easier than having to use the blender. So I'm just going to mix this up, and then I'll show you what the sauce will look like. Okay, so this is the sauce, and now I'm going to make the rice. For the rice. Now this rice has been soaked for about 24 hours. I like to soak this rice for a really long time because if it's not soaked enough, it can be hard and not taste very good. So I just want to talk about this rice for a minute or so. This rice is called Lundburg rice, and it is a savory and exotic flavor. You cannot mess this up because there's a black rice called mahogany, and there's a few different rices, and if you soak them, they will not get soft. So that's very important. And there's 2 or 3 different kinds that has that same yellow color. I did not save the actual rice or I would show you, but the reason why I don't save those is because I always take everything out of plastic and I put it into glass jars whenever I come home. So I throw all them things away. But the way that I remembered to get the right one was by looking for the savory. And when it says that exotic and savory, then you know that it's the right one, and it will get really soft. And what happens with it is it kind of breaks open. I don't know if you can kind of see, it kind of breaks out of a little shell. And what this actually is a grass, not actually a rice, but it's in the rice section, and it looks and tastes just like a rice. And I added some organic frozen peas and carrots to that, and I just soaked those for about maybe 20 minutes or so. So what I'm adding to this is, these are mushrooms that I have marinated, and I marinated this in nama soya. And I'm going to talk about nama soya a little bit after this recipe. And I guess I put maybe about a tablespoon or so. And I really am careful about how much I use because of the fact that these things are high in sodium. And you know, whenever you would go to these Japanese or Chinese restaurants and places that you would eat rices like Thai food and stuff, they're always so loaded with sodiums and stuff, and really bad soy sauces. And there's a huge difference between soy sauce traditionally and the namashoya. So I'm going to just pour those in there, and I'm also going to add some scallions, and I'm going to add raisins. The raisins give this is probably about a third a cup of raisins, really give this a little bit of a sweet twist to it. I like the fact that you have a little bit of salt, a little bit of spicy, and then some sweet. So I'm going to put in my carrots. These are carrots that I've used on my my Titan peeler. I don't know if I ever talked about the Titan peeler, but you can get that at Bed and Bath, and it is great. I love it. I use it all the time. So these are olives, and they're raw olives, and they're Italian, and I just kind of dice them up a little bit. Probably use maybe about 6 or 7 of them, and then I just cut them in 4s. And I really like the taste of those too. So this is some sprouts. It's just a few clover sprouts. I usually like to add some sprouts to every dish. And you can see how this is getting kind of like a wild Chinese rice look to it. And I'm going to add in some cashew nuts. Now, cashews is something that I don't use as a staple because a lot of the recipes in cashew nuts are like using a half a cup or a full cup or sometimes cups of cashew nuts, and I don't digest them really well, so they're not really a staple, but I keep them for little rice dishes because I used to go to a Thai restaurant years ago, and they always used cashews, and I always liked the way they taste. So if I eat a minimal amount, they don't really bother me, but I just can't really eat a whole lot of them. So I always add those in these dishes, these rice dishes. And so now I'm just going to add the sauce. And this sauce is really, really tasty. And I'm just going to throw, these are my sprouted sunflowers, I'm just going to throw a few of those in there. Just because I have them and I thought they'd be good to throw in there. You don't really have to use those. And I don't add any extra salt or anything in here because between your namashoya that you soaked your mushrooms and the little bit of aminos that I used and things like that, that's plenty enough salt for this recipe. I try to keep my salt intake down, and I don't use a lot of these things all the time, and I try to use them kind of minimally. But when you eat any kind of Chinese like rice like this, you definitely like to have that little bit of salt, and you definitely need some kind of a sauce that gives you that Chinese sort of flavor. So here's your delicious rice, and I'm just going to take a try. That really is delicious. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you try this recipe. So I'm going to end this recipe and come back to talk about some of these different soy sauces. So I just want to talk a little bit about different ingredients that I put in my food and why I use what I use. I get a lot of people that ask me different questions about these things, so I think it's important that people understand when I put these recipes together, why I do them and why I don't use traditional soy sauces and different things. And there's actually a reason why certain things are much better for you. So this is what nama shoyu looks like, and I don't use a lot of it all the time, but I will use it on occasions with these recipes, and it has something in it that's really good for your gut bacteria. So it's like a fermented soy, and it's a raw fermented soy. So it has something in it called lactobacillus, and that is something that you would sometimes take in a pill form, but a lot of times, you know, people will eat things like dairy, kefir, or one of those things to get those same kinds of things in their body. I don't choose to eat dairy because there's a lot of things in dairy that's really bad for you. So I try to get my good bacteria through other sources, and this is one of them. And another bad thing that's in dairy and things is there's stuff in dairy. So yes, you can get good gut bacteria from kefir and yogurt and different things like that, but at the same time, there's a certain substance in there that people have actually used to like glue wood with. It's really gluey stuff, and it really goos up your insides, and it causes all kinds of health issues if you have anything like sinuses, because it gives you mucus. So you have to really decide, if you ever decided that you wanted to think about being vegan or raw vegan, that's one of the reasons why people have cut out dairy. So getting back to the nama shoyu and soy sauce, is the fact that soy sauce, traditional soy sauce, has some really bad ingredients in it, and one of the really bad things that's in it is hexane, and that is a toxic chemical that's put into things like traditional soy sauces and a lot of other things. There's a lot of things that have hexane in it, and there's toxic sugars. There's sodium benzoate, which is another toxic chemical that they put in there. And something like nama shoyu has a lot more minerals, besides the fact that it has good gut bacteria. It has minerals, and it also doesn't have the phytoestrogens that the regular traditional soy sauce causes. So I think that these things are really, really important to know what you're using in your foods and why you wouldn't use traditional soy sauces. And this would definitely be your better choice. And miso is also another thing that is fermented and has good gut bacteria. And that's why I add those every once in a while into my dishes. And I always use low sodium because these things do have a lot of sodium, so you do have to be careful how much you use. And if you ever really saw how much different chemicals and things that they use, like in traditional restaurants, these things are overcooked. The amount of soy sauce that is being put on these foods is probably more than what I would eat in a year's time in one sitting. I mean, seriously, it is absolutely unbelievable. And so people need to be informed about these things and understand these things. So I'm just going to close with that because I just don't want to throw together recipes. There is a method to my madness, is what I'd like people to know. So I'm going to read this, and this is out of Timothy, and it's chapter 1, verse 7, and it says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power and a love and a sound of mind. Thank you so much, and if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a wonderful day.